All right, joining me now is one of the country's most distinguished political commentators, editor-at-large of The Australian, Paul Kelly. Paul, thank you for being with us tonight. A nice simple one at the start. Is Anthony Albanese up to the job of being Prime Minister?
Well, Anthony Albanese's got to demonstrate during the campaign, Peter, that he is up to the job. He's the front runner. Labor's the front runner. It has a big lead in the opinion polls. It's got a strong focus on Scott Morrison, running a strong negative campaign. The actual policy substance of the Labor campaign is extremely modest. They want to deny Scott Morrison a basis on which to attack them. And of course, we've seen a number of mistakes by Anthony Albanese right at the start of the campaign, and then another mistake today when it comes to the NDIS. So it's very important for Albanese as the Labor leader and alternative Prime Minister to, I think, lift his performance in a policy sense over the course of the remainder of the election campaign.
Yeah, but you make the point quite right. I think on both sides of the two major parties, there's not a lot in terms of policy detail. You make the point that they've got a very skinny policy agenda with Labor. If they haven't got much to learn, I'm surprised he doesn't know it inside out. I've worked for an opposition leader who didn't need sheets and didn't need notes. And I don't think any of these questions from the media are gotcha questions. I think they're absolutely going to the kernel of big issues. He says NDIS is important. We know what it is in terms of budget weight. Why is he struggling so much? Is he not doing the work? Is he intellectually not up to it? Has he lost his confidence? I mean, we're 2 weeks away from polling day.
Well, Peter, he should have been able to answer that question. This is about the NDIS. Well, this is one of the biggest single items in the budget. It's an item that Labor is proud of. It's a fundamental problem for the budget because there have to be changes to the NDIS during the next term. Labor has a policy on the NDIS. The leader should be fully aware of it. I can only conclude that he hasn't properly done his policy homework. And that's what we saw at the start of the election campaign in terms of the Labor leader not being able to provide the details on the unemployment rate or the cash rate.
Yeah, but you've written about this, I've written about it too. I mean, we're at such a critical juncture in our history. We've got big issues economically. We saw that with the rate rise. We see that with the inflation numbers. We know strategically, in and around our region and the world more broadly, you know, it's the time we need the very best of us to be there in the parliament, and we need the best of us to be our national leaders. Look past Albanese, look at the front bench as well. There's not a lot of great depth there either.
Well, look, let me tell you where we are in this election campaign, because we had the inflation numbers and then we've had the Reserve Bank fundamentally change interest rate policy. We are now on an upward cycle of interest rates for a few years. We're going to have high inflation for a few years. This means that the entire economic policy settings have been transformed mid-campaign. And whoever wins the election is going to have to address far more aggressively the inflation problem, the deficit problem and the debt problem. And that is going to mean a tighter restraint on spending and possibly increases in taxation. Now, this is the current debate. Now, neither side, neither Scott Morrison nor Anthony Albanese are prepared to talk about this. Neither side is prepared to come clean with the electorate and tell them what will be a coherent and effective agenda for the next 3 years. And the reason they won't do that is really important. They're not prepared to do it because if they did it, they'd lose the election. The electorate is simply not prepared at this stage to be confronted with the truth, that is the hard policies which this country will need over the course of the next 3 or 6 years. And that's why the leaders of both parties won't come clean. Now, should they be honest with the people? Yes, they should. But frankly, they don't have the confidence to do that. And the reason they don't have the confidence to do that is the power of the negative in Australian politics is too great. If they devised a proper agenda for the next 3 years, they would guarantee that they would lose the election. That's why they won't do it.
It's a sad indictment of where we are though, Paul. I mean, it's hard not to feel a bit depressed hearing all of that. I don't disagree with you. I mean, I watched this debate today with Josh Frydenberg in the seat of Kooyong up against one of the Teal independents, Monique Ryan. A whole lot of vitriol came from Ryan, a whole lot of assertions about the integrity of Josh Frydenberg. I might disagree with him on some policy issues, but you'll never find a more energetic or harder working politician. He's the sort of bloke that you want to have in Parliament. When I go before to that point about the calibre of our leaders, she made this claim today about Josh Frydenberg. I want to play it and then I'll come back to you.
You're the Treasurer for New South Wales. You weren't here. Anyone who's had experience of a Victorian public hospital in the last 2 years knows what it's like. Public hospitals need more help than they've received from this government.
Well, Kieran, I'm not going to be insulted like that. My father's a surgeon. In fact, he was the surgeon here at Vimy House Hospital in Kew for more than 20 years. My sister's a paediatrician at the Royal Children's Hospital for more than 20 years. My uncle is a urologist who's been the chair of the Australian Urology Society. I'm not going to be insulted by that, saying I'm the Treasurer for New South Wales.
I watched her face and I saw it flash across the face that she misjudged that one. She didn't do her homework on Josh Frydenberg's background. But this is the low rent stuff that politics has now become.
Well, look, there are a couple of points here, Peter. The first one is, can we dispense with this propaganda and nonsense that these independents are all about integrity and morality? The fact of the matter is that they're on about power. Their task is to get into the Parliament, to control the crossbench, and in order to achieve that, they want a hung Parliament. So that's their objective, and this is an objective about power. If you look at the tactics that they're using and the language that they're using, demonstrated by Dr. Ryan today, they are prepared to get down and dirty just as anyone else is in the political parties. That's the first point. The second point about this deeply revealing debate today is that Dr. Ryan made it clear that she wants a radical climate change policy, a fully blown National Integrity Commission. She wants to completely dismantle the border protection regime. And she seemed, in relation to China, to be more critical of the Australian government than of China. When you put all this together, along with a few other comments she made, it looks as though she's very close to what I would call the green agenda. She won't tell us, if she's on the crossbench, which party she would support to form a government, but it's clear what the answer is, because the criteria she put forward, the test she put forward is, which is the most effective party when it comes to the Integrity Commission and climate change? Well, everyone in politics knows the answer to that is Labor. So if she was to be honest, she would tell us that she would put Anthony Albanese into office if she was in Parliament sitting on the crossbench. But she won't tell us that. She won't come clean and tell us that. Why is that? Very simple.
Well,
if she told us that, I mean, if she told us that, she'd lose the election, because essentially what she's got to do is she's got to persuade Liberals to leave the Liberal Party and vote for her. But if she actually says that if she gets into Parliament she'll put in a Labor government, then she clearly undermines her own position and can't win the seat of Kooyong. Well, how do we judge integrity in terms of that particular position?
Well, they're all pretending to be Liberal light, but they're actually hard left. And it's whether the voters in these key seats, particularly Kooyong, wake up to the fact before they get to the 21st of May. Have to leave it there, Paul. That was terrific analysis. Thrilled to have you on the show.